right? So it really provides that group dynamic in terms of having a discussion. The applicant will be able to kind of speak to multiple people that work within the organization, and for the organization to get different perspectives, right, on the job seeker that has applied. Video interviews are still alive and well. As I said, we went through the pandemic, right? And that had a big impact on the recruitment process. So video interviews still current in this day. A lot of in-person interviews still happening, but video interviewing is very convenient, very efficient for, scheduling, right? And reaching people that are perhaps at a further distance. So we'll talk about that as well. And also unexpected interviews, right? This happens all the time, I would say, in the professional world, very common trend. Unexpected in the sense that maybe it's not scheduled, right? It's more informal, could be, through an event, right? Or some sort of connection that's been arranged, but does tend to happen, right? And oftentimes it's not just unexpected, it's maybe just not known of, right? That was, an interview. So a few different types of interviews as we've lined up here. We'll go into each one to highlight and elaborate a little bit further, but just an agenda for what's going to be covered through interviews. Okay. So as we mentioned, the pre-interview, right? A pre-interview by phone, chat, or questionnaire will do the following, right? So it's assessing for communication skills, right? This is over telephone, determining writing skills when done via chat, insight about your character, work ethic, and interests, learning about your goals and knowledge, and streamlining towards the in-person interview. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is really the invitation to the interview, which is kind of the next step, especially the in-person component. And this is a good opportunity for the employer to assess, right? If you are even a candidate that's of interest to bring forward into an interview, right? So they're assessing your communication skills, right? The way you respond over the phone or through text, right? And writing to the invitation, right? It's a good opportunity for the employer to get that first impression, right? Insight about your character, work ethic, and interests, as we mentioned, right? Sometimes during the pre-interview, right, the call out to the job seeker, the employer may ask a few general questions, right, just to really begin building the rapport with the job seeker, right? So they may ask questions about your background, right, in terms of your professional experience, right, your work ethic, your interests, current status in terms of employment, right? So just really the starting blocks for building the rapport with the job seeker may be assessed at this point. Learning your goals and knowledge, right? So as I was mentioning, again, just started to build that rapport. It may come with questions such as your goals in terms of your employment, your knowledge as well in the sector or the role you're applying for, right? But ultimately, it's looking to streamline towards the in-person interview, right? So this is the call out, right? Welcoming to the person to an interview and really setting the stage, right? So perhaps discussing a location, right? A time, a date, things that will lead to the next step for that discussion. Okay. All right. So when it comes to research, right, what's good to know is the company and the person who will be interviewing you. Okay. So if you are able to do this research to find out who exactly this will be, right, it really shows the employer that you're going that extra mile in terms of your preparation for the interview. Right. So sometimes this information may not be fully available, whether it's online, right, but whatever you can find in terms of your preparation will be helpful for you to bring towards the interview. When it comes to preparation, right? To use a landline rather than a cell phone, right? A friend or family member, library or employment center, asking appropriate questions to your interviewer, checklist of items you'd like them to know about you, your resume, and a notepad and pencil as well, right? So all some things that you do want to make sure you have with you as a preparation format, right? When it comes to actual calls, right? And, actual like verbal communication, we do recommend a landline. However, we recognize maybe that's not a current trend in today's labor market for everybody to have for job seekers. So, a cell phone will work, but just ensuring that you have the clearest line of communication through mobile or landline, right? To actually speak to somebody who may be calling you. Questions for the interviewer is always a great tool to have, just to make sure that the employer, gets to know what is on your mind in terms of what you expect from the job. a checklist of items you'd like for them to know about you. So this is really important to make sure the employer knows you professionally and personally, right? So if you come with a checklist and you're aware of what you'd want them to know, you're sure to be able to make sure that does happen, right? Your resume, a notepad and pencil, always very important to have as well, right? Your resume, yes, it might have been sent in the application stage, but it's also good for a person to review during the time of the interview, and a notepad and pencil to take any relevant notes or based on the discussion you do have during the interview, all things that you should be bringing with you. Okay. When it comes to practice, this is a common theme throughout all the interview stage, but speaking on the phone at a relaxed pace and clearly enunciating, very important to make sure you're speaking very clearly, right? You're not rushing over your words. You're not, mixing up your words and such, right? So just very important to make sure you do practice as much as you can, whether it involves, using a family member, a friend, or honestly speaking into the mirror sometimes could be very helpful. Really important to practice as much as you can what a potential pre-interview call could look like. And engaging. So not being afraid to reschedule if you're not in a good mental or physical space. All right. So this is a really important step that job seekers should be aware of, right? I think something very current and relevant to today's labor market. Perhaps if an interview date and time is arranged, but that may not work for you, whether your mental or physical state or you have a pre-arrangement, it's okay to ask for rescheduling, right? Make sure you do it professionally, with courtesy and respect, right, to the employer's time, because they may not have that time available. And if you are looking to work with them, you do need to sort of flex to their schedule. All right. So it's never a bad idea. If you do need to reschedule to ask politely, we definitely encourage it to job seekers. Okay. Now, when it comes to the in-person interview, all right, so as I said, very common nowadays, right, especially since we're beyond the pandemic. Here's what we've mentioned. An in-person interview will help the employer identify candidates. If candidates can apply knowledge competently, are they a good fit with the organizational culture? And if they have the interpersonal skills to communicate and work effectively with teams and clients, okay? So all things that could be very well assessed in an in-person format, right? I think some of these things can still be assessed in a video or virtual format, but like I always say, there's no way of communicating and working together like there is in person, right? And I think we've learned that through the pandemic and the current labor market that we face now, right? So really good to assess some of the things as we mentioned, organizational culture, right? The interpersonal skills that are needed to effectively work with people around you, whether they're team members, clients, management as well, right? These kind of skills are definitely going to be assessed when you are meeting with an employer in person. Okay. So when it comes to research, and we'll start to see some common themes at the research stage and even others. But we mentioned the company and the person who will be interviewing you, as we mentioned, but also the dress code. Of course, now we're going to be actually be in front of a person, right? Or perhaps a group. So you want to make sure you're dressing professionally, whether that's business casual, business professional, right? Do some research in terms of the organization, the day-to-day culture, right? What the dress code simply is. If you do need to ask it in the pre-interview stage, that's never a problem as well. But just making sure you come dressed appropriately, right? Not overdressed or underdressed, really important. Preparation. All right. So we mentioned a few things that you can bring with you. Samples or a portfolio, if relevant. Copies of your resume is a must, I would say, and a business card, if applicable. If you do have one, whether it's tied to your current employment, right, or just a general one, definitely important to bring with you. As we mentioned, appropriate attire, questions to ask the employer, as we've mentioned earlier. Making sure you travel with plenty of time in the event of delays that are outside of your control, considering traffic, subway and transit delays, if that is your route of method, your route of travel, planning up a backup route in the event of transit or road trouble, as I mentioned, and always being sure to arrive at your destination roughly 10 minutes early. I like to go with 15 personally, right? It's always good to make sure you get to your place early rather than on time, right? In terms of the labor market today, employers and hiring managers really like to see that promptness, right? Rather than planning out your schedule to arrive just at the time of the interview. Okay, so making sure you arrive early is really helpful to making sure you even get to the interview spot on time and ready to go. Okay. When it comes to practice, similar themes as well. So making sure you're vocalizing your answers to common questions, communicating with confidence in your body language and nonverbal communication, and using Spark Hire to practice, record, and review mock interviews. Spark Hire is a platform that we use in our organization to help job seekers actually practice their interview skills. So job seekers will have the chance to record themselves responding to preset questions. So when they record themselves, they can actually watch back and see what their response looks like. So a very great tool that we use with our job seekers through our programming. But other methods, as we mentioned here, are very common, very relevant to today's labor market, and definitely very important, right? To make sure you're vocalizing your answers and your responses very clearly, enunciating your words correctly, and communicating with confidence, right? When it comes to your body language, right, and nonverbal communication, which makes up a big part of how you come off and the impression you give to an employer. So sitting upright, making eye contact, and just showing general confidence, right? And if it is a panel interview, making sure you're directing your attention and words towards the people in the room. And when it comes to engaging in the in-person interview, so some quick notes here, making sure your cell phone is shut off, very important, by actively listening and showing your interest when interviewers are speaking and asking for clarification and posing questions. So the first one, very straightforward. You don't ever want your phone to ring during an interview. So we do recommend not just putting it on vibrate, but actually shutting it off entirely. So even that if your phone shakes, you're not necessarily being distracted by what's going on. Active listening to the people that are speaking, right? Especially in panel interviews, which we'll talk about later. Really important to show the interest and engagement towards the person that is speaking and respecting what they are saying. And feeling free to ask for clarification when necessary. So whether it is asking for a question to be repeated, asking for an extension in terms of just a little bit more elaboration on the question, right? Or even asking, if necessary, for you to return to the question a little bit later, is something that was common in today's labor market. Okay. Now, a panel interview we've referenced a few times, but to go into it a little further, some companies use a panel interview because they want the following: a diverse panel to avoid unconscious bias in hiring, excuse me, practices and human rights violations, reducing the risk of hiring the wrong person for the job, and all departments or people who will be interacting with the new hire have their needs considered. So some very key important points when it comes to having a panel interview. Again, this is a group of people in the organization interviewing, typically one or two job seekers. And these points are very important, right? Especially when it comes to the unconscious bias, right? And human rights violations, things that we'll discuss later on as well. But when you have multiple people as part of the organization, it gives varied perspective, right? In terms of whether this person is the right job, avoiding those biases, as we've mentioned, right? And just making sure that everybody who is going to be interacting with the person in the role will have their needs considered, right? In terms of if that person is right for the role that the company is hiring for. Okay. So when it comes to research, now that we are up against, multiple people, right, it's helpful to do any research you can on anybody who will be present in the room, understanding their role within the company as well. And we mentioned a few times the dress code. That's always going to be important. Okay. So very helpful to know who exactly, again, will be with you, right? Whether they are somebody you report to, somebody you work with a little bit more closely, right? Somebody perhaps that's maybe reporting to you, right? So understanding the rules of the people you'll be speaking to, always going to help you in terms of giving you an advantage to speaking professionally. Preparation, very similar as well. So work samples, portfolio, copies of your resumes, business cards, appropriate attire, and questions to ask. This is also consistent as well. I would say a lot of the feedback we've already provided, I would really only echo at this point. Vocalizing your answers to common questions and communicating confidence in your body language and nonverbal communication. The important points here is that now you're facing multiple people rather than just one. So when it comes to your body language and your nonverbal communication, making sure you're making eye contact with everyone in the room, right? Directing your attention and your interest towards the person that is speaking on the other side of the table. Really important. Always important to vocalize your responses and your thoughts very clearly. That's never going to change, but just making sure that you are fully engaged and fully aware of who exactly is in the room and directing your attention there. And as we mentioned, directing and engaging with each panelist, treat the interview like a conversation and listening to different viewpoints. So you may be hearing comments, contributions from multiple people rather than just a one-on-one. So just being sure that you're prepared to actually respond, right, to the different viewpoints that are coming from other individuals. Okay. And when it comes to a video interview, still a very common format in today's labor market. However, a lot of employers, when the opportunity is possible, would shift towards an in-person format, but definitely not to discredit or undermine the video interview. So, video interview is used to interview candidates from a broader geographic area more efficiently, assess communication skills, get insight beyond your resume, and learn about a candidate's goals and knowledge to streamline the interview in-person process and determine a candidate's age, ethnicity, gender without having to ask illegal questions. Okay, so some very important points about the video interview. We have to consider now that this is, in a virtual setting, right? It's not necessarily happening in person. We're really only seeing a portion of the person as well, right? As opposed to the full individual. So some things we've mentioned, as we said, interviewing people from a broader geographic area. I would say that's probably the biggest highlight of the video interview. It's very easy to arrange in terms of reaching anybody wherever they are, right? Especially if it's not quite feasible to actually attend in person. Very common, especially for remote roles. Where companies are hiring and meeting with people across different parts of the country or world. Assessing communication skills, that still continues to be a highlight, especially in the video interview. Even though your nonverbal may not be shown in full because you're not fully present, you are still communicating using your words and your eye contact right through the video format. Getting insight beyond your resume, that's still something that's present through the video interview. Your resume, I often say, is what your experience is on paper, but during an interview, whether it's video in person, gets to show you that much more in terms of the way you elaborate what is on paper to the employer. So it's always helpful for the employer to get more insight. Learning about the candidate's goals and knowledge that continues to be present in the video interview. Streamlining for the in-person interview. Sometimes there are pre-interviews that happen in a video format. So it may be a very quick meeting through a Zoom call, a Teams meeting, you name it, and that could lead to an in-person interview, right? Just from the initial assessment done through video format, it may actually invite you and open up the opportunity to meet in person. And then lastly, as we mentioned, the candidate's age, ethnicity, gender, without having to ask a legal question, something we'll look at a little bit later. But these are obviously kind of shown through through the video format, right? You will have the opportunity to see somebody through camera. You won't see them in full, but you will see them enough to kind of answer some of the questions that are mentioned here. Okay. When it comes to research, so it's still important to research those who will be present and understand the rules within the company and the dress code as well. Now, dress code is an interesting one, especially because you're not going to be fully present in terms of the employer or the people you're speaking to seeing your full attire. We do suggest, and this is a very common trend, to make sure that you're dressed head to toe in professional wear, right? Or to match, what the dress code is. It does help with producing just your professionalism and making sure you feel confident and prepared. You are treating the interview seriously, even though only a portion of you may be visible on camera. So we still suggest it's very common in today's labor market to make sure that you're dressed fully head to toe in the wear that you would wear to an in-person interview. All right. When it comes to preparation, links with work samples or portfolios to screen share. So now considering that you may not be sharing your files in an in-person format, do want to have the opportunity to share your screen or just share it with the other side in terms of a digital format. So whether that's something that you want to email ahead of time or share in screen during the actual meeting, very important to make sure that you have a digital copy that's visible and just making sure, of course, that your computer and the device you're using is able to share appropriately. Appropriate tire, as we mentioned. Questions to ask is always a good idea, regardless of the interview format. It really just shows your engagement, your interest and enthusiasm towards the opportunity. an uncluttered workspace without any distractions and noise, and your technology. So the last 2 points really important, making sure that anything behind you that may show up on camera is clear and also clear of noise as well. So oftentimes we recommend using a private room if you can, if it's not something that's feasible within your household space or whatever space you find yourself in, looking toward places like ACCESS, for instance, or even your local library is a very common place where job seekers do professional interviews, right? So very important to make sure that you have nothing against your walls. There are no noises coming from outside. If you do need to put a sign on your door, for instance, right, just mentioning that you're in a private and important meeting, that's definitely recommended. And then your technology, as I mentioned, right? So we always suggest doing a test run if you can, whether you're meeting on Zoom or Teams, just to make sure your technology is up to speed. If your computer has to go through updates, making sure it is fully charged. These are things that you want to do to make sure that you're prepared for the video interview. When it comes to practice, continuing to vocalize your answers clearly, communicating confidence in your body language, looking directly into the camera, and using Spark Hire to practice. Spark Hire, again, is a platform that we use within our organization for our clients to practice your interviews. The one I would highlight here is looking directly into the camera. Really important not to stare off in other directions, right? Especially to look towards the corner, right, where the interviewer may be on screen. Very important to look into the camera. That is the best way of making eye contact and the recommended way in today's labor market to just show that verbal or nonverbal communication. And when it comes to engagement, again, a video interview, it can easily be facilitated in a panel style. So making sure if that is the case, that you're communicating with each panelist, right? If it's multiple people on the call, even if it's just one or two, directing them as best as you can, right? As I said, making eye contact with the camera, but always listening and addressing the people that are speaking towards you. And lastly, the unexpected interview. So this one a bit unique compared to some of the other formats we just reviewed. But we mentioned you might find yourself in an unexpected, spontaneous or informal job interview. And some examples include, a recruiter calling you unexpectedly, meeting a hiring manager at a networking event, or on-the-spot interviews at a job fair. All right, so just some examples of how unexpected or informal job interviews do happen. I would say this is very common in today's labor market, especially at networking events or just community events overall. You never quite know if an unexpected interview is happening, but when you are present in a space where employment opportunities are present, or there are hiring managers, or anything related to professionalism, it's always important to be prepared, right? To potentially respond to hiring managers who may have questions for you about your goals, your aspirations, your work history, and so on. Okay. For preparation, we mentioned the following. So practice and ready to engage by making sure you're doing the following. Are you ready to deliver your elevator speech and carrying a business or profile call? So to highlight the elevator speech, this is a term we use in the employment sector, really to highlight your ability to communicate yourself professionally in terms of your background, your goals, your work experiences, education. And we use the term elevator speech because you want to be able to deliver that message in the time it would normally take to ride an elevator. So a bit of a funny term, but definitely relevant to mention how much time you want to take to actually speak about yourself. So, in 30 seconds or so, right, a normal elevator ride, maybe a minute, you want to be able to confidently pitch yourself to a potential employer or hiring manager. Often things you're mentioning, as I said, your work history, your aspirations, your goals, and your education as well, your skill sets, any certifications you may have. These are things you would definitely want to include in your elevator speech, but also making sure it comes off genuine, authentic, and personable too. As I mentioned earlier, if you do have a business card, whether it's tied to your current employment or just a personal business card, a profile card of sorts, always important to keep a few copies of those when you do go into any professional events. I tend to keep copies in my wallet. That is a great example of what you can do because you never know in the community where you might end up meeting somebody who's doing an unexpected interview with you. Okay, so just to shift gears a bit here, we wanted to talk about interview questions, but specifically, how do you respond skillfully to interview questions? So just to go a little further into that. All right. So just some points we've mentioned. One of the most common interview questions in today's labor market and has been for quite some time is the tell me about yourself question. As we mentioned, it's often the first question asked, right? It's used to set people at ease. It reveals if you're prepared, tells the interviewer if you're a good fit, and it provides an opportunity to create a great first impression. So this question can be answered in so many ways. As we mentioned, it tends to be the first question. It really opens up the floor, right, to build that connection, that rapport for the employer to get an impression of who you are. And here are some tips that we've mentioned in terms of how you can skillfully respond. So leading with your strongest selling points, keeping your answer professional, and keeping it concise, very important. Okay. So your strongest selling points, I would say some of the things you want to mention, your recent work history, any education or certifications you have that are recent and relevant to the role, your aspirations, your goals, what makes you interested in the company and the role that you're applying for. These are all things that, would stand out as strong selling points, right? It really shows, what your interest is in terms of why you want to be working with that company. Keeping your answer professional, really important to do this. You want to avoid mentioning anything, recreational, right, or personal about yourself. You're focusing on the job that you're applying for, the interviewer that you're meeting, right? So just keeping your answer specifically to your professional matters. Anything about your personal life you can put on the backside, and keeping it concise as well. A lot of times people do tend to spend this question going really on and on, right? In terms of talking about themselves, their history, sometimes going a little unprofessional, as I mentioned. So keeping it concise. Not too long ago, I just mentioned our elevator speech. So I would say consider your elevator speech expanded a little further, right? 30 seconds to a minute for an elevator speech, but this question, you may want to spend, 2 to 3 minutes just sort of responding with some of the points I mentioned earlier. Okay. Verification questions. So this is more of a category of questions rather than a specific one. So questions to verify factual information. They connect you and your resume to the position, and they're typically close-ended and yes or no questions. All right. So some tips we have: do focus on the specifics. Avoid giving a generic answer. Give examples of how the past will help you in this job, and don't focus on any skills or experience you may lack. Okay. So all tips that relevant to today's labor market. Verification questions will come up in so many different ways. As we mentioned, it's kind of a category, right? But focus on the specifics, right? In terms of your history, what the question is being asked of, right? Avoid giving a generic answer, right? The more detail you can provide, the more clarity you can provide. If you're explaining a situation you've been in, or how you would deal with a potential situation, very important to give any detail and just avoid being generic in your response. As I mentioned, examples of the past and how specifically they'll help you in this job. So really important to highlight that second part, right? Not just highlighting what you've done in the past, but how that experience and the skills you got will actually help you in the job that you're applying for. So that is really important. Employers would always want to see, especially in today's labor market, that you can do the job that they've set out. And you, as a job seeker, want to be able to highlight the skills and experiences that you've had that make you confident to do the job that they're asking for. And we also mentioned to avoid focusing on any skills or experience you may lack. This may be the case, right? If you are a job seeker, that you may not, have the confidence, the knowledge, competency, experience, right, in a certain area or expertise that an employer may list. Avoid focusing and in terms of mentioning how inexperienced you are, right? You always want to sell yourself as confident and experienced to the best of your degree. We do say you don't want to extend any truths, right, or any knowledge that you do have, meaning you don't want to fabricate things, for lack of a better word, right? But focus on the skills and experiences that you do have, right? What you don't have is where you can grow, where you can get further experience in the job, right? So when you're discussing during an interview, focus on what you do have rather than what you don't have. Okay. And just to go a little further into it, so we mentioned some methods that you could use to actually respond to interview questions. So we have the STAR method, really great way to just respond to many different questions. So STAR, STAR, just going through it. S to describe the situation, T to describe the task, the action you took as A, and then explaining the results. So following this format, we recommend to all job seekers really does a good job at responding to almost any question that an employer may throw at you, right? So especially when they are situational, we're looking at the first part, describing the situation that you found yourself in, right? Describe the task that you were, handed, right? That you had to take on to get through the situation, the action that you took. So what exactly you did do in that moment, and then the results that came of it. Right. So as long as you follow this method, we find that it's a very competent way to respond to interview questions in today's labor market. Okay. So some example questions here, right? Especially when it comes to situational, using that STAR method we just highlighted. How would you handle a client who was angry with you? Changes you would make if you ran a department, right? How you would prioritize competing deadlines from different managers. And just going a little further down the list here, right? Describing a situation when your team was behind schedule and how you've handled multiple deadlines, right? So just a list of common or example questions here that you may find in interviews. And as I mentioned, using that STAR method, situation, task, action, result, can very well lead you to answering these questions very professionally. Okay. Personality questions. These may come up during the interview, right? They reveal who you are as a person, how you'll fit in on the team and within the company culture. They indicate your level of self-awareness and knowledge in terms of strengths and weaknesses. So your answers will influence the following in terms of how the interviewer sees you, right? So avoid being shy or humble, right? Give a career-related answer and make it memorable, right? Some things that you want to consider. Shyness, right? Never really going to help you in the interview stage. Humbleness, very respectful, but I do say, and I think it's very relevant in today's labor market, right? You want to be confident. That's really important, right? Not necessarily arrogant, right? But you want to be confident in your skills, your experience, right? And showing the employer that you are the right person for the job. And oftentimes that does mean, speaking about yourself in such a way that's positive, right? That's refreshing, and really showing, as I said, you are the right person for the job, and not really considering, other job seekers who could potentially do the same thing. A career-related answer, as we mentioned, keeping your responses professional. That's never going to change at any point in the interview process, and making it memorable, right? So the more you rehearse, the more you practices, the more practice you do, right? In terms of reflecting on your experiences, your knowledge, right? You're more likely you are to come up as making your responses memorable, right? Leaving an impression with an employer. I would say any memorable response is often rehearsed beforehand. So really important to do your practice. Okay. So some personality related questions, just to go over a few. How do you handle stress and pressure? Are you easy to talk to? Describe your work ethic a little lower. And what are your strengths and weaknesses? All right. But we do have a list here. Very common in today's labor market to see these questions in all fields, I would say as well. Not just sector specific, but these are things that really speak to who you are as an individual and who you are as a professional. Okay, when it comes to the company or organization, right? So illustrating your commitment to the sector and to getting the job. Successful answers rely on preparation, knowledge, and research. And here is how you can learn more about the company you're looking to work with, right? So websites, relevant news sources, publication, discussion groups, webinars, seminars, and conference presentations. So all things that you can gather independently, right, through your own research, your own initiative and diligence. Very important to gather as much information as you can before you go through the door and actually meet with a group or a person interviewing you. The more prepared you are, the better off you are going to be. Okay. And questions when it comes to, organization, company, industry sector, right? That could very well come up, right? And you want to make sure you are prepared based on your presentation or your preparation to respond. So how you foresee the future of the industry, what you like best and least about the industry, how the industry has changed since you started, especially if you've had a, prolonged career, what you know about their company, and how you keep yourself up to date in this industry, right? So all things that could potentially come up, I would say these are questions that are very commonly asked in all fields of employment in Canada's labor market, and things that really tell more about yourself as a professional. And sometimes there are outside the box questions, right? Sometimes questions that are a little bit off the script, if you will, right? Maybe talk a little bit more about who you are as a person, not necessarily related to the role, right? But they do have some purpose, right? And let's break it down a little further. Use as an icebreaker or to see what kind of creative or critical thinking skills you have, and taking a moment to gather your thoughts. And try to link your response to a quality response that would benefit the workplace. All right. So sometimes these questions may surprise you. They may throw you, for a loop, right? And just really kind of set you back a bit, but they often are asked, with a certain intention behind it. And here are some examples, right? What's the most important thing people don't understand about you? What's the last book or movie that you read or saw? And are you lucky? Right? These are just some common ones. I've heard plenty just being in the employment sector, working with many job seekers and employers about how questions like these come up, right? And what kind of discussions they lead to. They can sometimes lead to, more pleasurable and positive and funny conversations for sure, right? But often remember, as a job seeker, they are being asked for a purpose, right? They are telling, as we covered personality earlier, a little bit more about who you are as a person, right? But also just relaying more to your skills and your experiences and how they've shaped you as a professional. Okay. So we'll shift gears once again. I want to just talk a little bit about illegal questions, right? So questions that could come up during an interview that are, should be avoided by the interviewer, but they could come up, and it is important for us to recognize and acknowledge how exactly to respond. All right. So what questions are illegal? We've listed on the left-hand side here. So questions about your country, your place of origin, and citizenship or status, religion, faith or creed, your age, gender or sexual orientation, race or ethnicity, family structure, children or marital status, mental or physical health and disability, your Canadian experience, a very important one there, and your place of birth. Okay. So as we mentioned here, just on the right side, we have the Canadian Human Rights Charter and certain laws that prohibit these kind of questions, right? And we've mentioned that the Ontario Human Rights Commission exists to ensure that employers follow practices that comply with the Ontario Human Rights Code. Okay, so we do have legislative structures, at every level of government, federal, provincial, municipal as well, right? To make sure that employers are following standards that are fair, legal, right? And don't necessarily discriminate against anybody based on where they come from. One of the common themes that you'll highlight, that we can highlight from all these questions listed on the left here, right, is that they don't necessarily relate to you being able to do the job, right? Regardless of, your citizenship status, right? Your age, your race or ethnicity. These are things that are personal to you in nature, right? And then they don't necessarily speak to your ability to actually perform on the job, right? What makes you able to do the job is the experience and skills you have, right? And your confidence to do that, right? Those are the things that matter, your professional experiences, right? One thing I really want to highlight is Canadian experience. Employers should not be asking you if you have Canadian experience or discriminating you against you in any way if you do lack, right? So that is really important. Unfortunately, it's still kind of common in today's labor market, but you do want to make sure that you're prepared to respond, which we'll talk about soon. Okay. So how do you know you're facing a legal question? So I'm going to go ahead and list some examples here. All right. So, of course, obvious and direct, right? There's no way around this, right? It's pretty clear. What is your religion? How old you are, and do you have children, right? These are very, clear, not around the bush, for lack of a better term, right? In terms of, some of your personal matters, right? Sometimes questions come off a little bit more deliberate, and unethical or offensive, as we mentioned, right? Example here, somebody saying, you don't have kids because we can't accommodate somebody who has to run a home and take care of sick kids all the time, right? So, obviously inappropriate, right? And doesn't necessarily speak to your ability to do the job, right? If you have kids, that is your personal business, right? And again, you should be focused on what you can do, right, when you are working. Casual and inadvertent, right? So a last comment here. Sorry, I'm late. The school called and said my daughter's in the office with a fever. Do you have kids? Right. So, it's something an employer could potentially say, right? Just an example that we've seen and hopefully does not come up in anybody's interview stage, right? But these are some questions that could come up, right? And just some examples to highlight here for you to sort of be knowledgeable about how to identify illegal questions. Okay. Now, when it comes to responding, right, in the face and in the moment, right, of illegal or unethical questions, here's some mentions. Here's some points that we mentioned. I remain professional and respond with confidence. I make sure that I respond without being confrontational, staying positive and responding using a thoughtful tone or voice, and remain calm and try to redirect and diffuse the situation. Okay. So some points we mentioned, right? Starting off on the left here, right? Responding with confidence, really important to do your best you can in that regard, right? So responding confidently, and rather than shying away, right, or trying to ignore or avoid the question. When you speak up with confidence, when you show your nonverbal communication as showing off, as presenting yourself in a way where you're not prepared to answer the question, right? Then it will sort of make the employer a little less tim or a little more timid, right, to kind of continue on with some of those unethical gestures, right? So just making sure you remain professional, right? Not necessarily, showing an agitated or aggressive attitude in response, but responding with confidence, right? That you're not prepared to answer that question and perhaps want to move on from a conversation like that. As I mentioned, not being confrontational, right? So some of these questions may come up, right? Obviously we have, as I mentioned, legislative matters to prevent this, but behind a closed door, right? Sometimes questions could come up, and you don't want to be confrontational, right? That will start, an argument and escalate things. As I said, you want to respond with confidence, right? So, it starts with your body language, right? But when it comes to what you're saying, it could be as simple as, trying to redirect the conversation right back to the job posting, the interview questions that are being asked before, right? Respond using a thoughtful tone or voice, as I mentioned, right? You can respond by saying, I don't think this is appropriate, right? I'm really focused on the job that I'd like to apply for, right? And I'm really interested in talking further about the role that we have on hand here, right? Just shows confidence, professionalism. You're not necessarily being confrontational by trying to escalate the matter there, right? And lastly, as we mentioned, redirecting, right? So as I said, trying to bring the conversation back to some of the matters that were discussed previously, and really just back to the job and the reason you're there as a job seeker. Okay. So some more things about unconscious bias. Moving left to right here. I've been out of the workforce for a few years. People assume that your skills aren't current. Person in the middle here, because I'm young, hiring managers sometimes assume I won't stay long. Being an older candidate, people think I can't learn new skills. And being a newcomer, some companies assume education doesn't meet Canadian standards. All right, so these are some unconscious bias that we really want to avoid. As job seekers, you should try to face these thoughts and feelings, right? And really realize that you can overcome them, right? These are things that should not limit you and show confidence, right? As an employment agency, we work with job seekers to overcome these barriers and challenges, whether you're a newcomer, whether you've been somebody who's been out of the workforce for quite some time, right? Or whether you need upskilling and training, we can help you get towards that, right? But these are things that sometimes job seekers and even employers have in their minds, right? That are not necessarily relevant to their job. They're not professional, appropriate, and sometimes can cross into being illegal, right? So wanted to highlight some examples here. Okay. And we've mentioned a few times questions that you do want to ask an interviewer, right? It's always important to have a set of questions that you want to show to an employer. Make sure you have discussion with them based on what your personal interests and goals are. All right. So asking the wrong set of questions can definitely have an impact on the success of your interview. All right. Good questions at the wrong time can also leave a bad impression. There's a time and place for everything. All right. Here are some examples of things you should ask and maybe avoid asking, right? So don't ask when you can start taking time off. Instead, you can mention, how would you describe the company's culture, right? So instead of asking, when you can take time off, vacation, right? That's showing a lack of engagement, commitment to the role that you're applying for, to the company you want to work with, right? You can ask, as a follow-up, right, how you would describe the company's culture, right? Getting an understanding of, their work schedule, right? Time off during the year. It could really lead to further discussion about just how the company operates on a day-to-day basis. Can you work at home versus what opportunities are there for growth and within the organization or team? All right. So once again, on the left side, working from home, right? That could be a part of the role. Oftentimes you'll find that in the job posting, right? Or the application stage, whether the role is work from home, if it's hybrid, if there's any possibility of that. So for you to ask this, you do need to be careful so that it doesn't come off as, somebody who's not committed to actually being in office and working with people in person. But instead, you can ask questions about, team and organization growth. Again, just showing more commitment and engagement towards the organization. Qualifying for a raise as a question, right? Instead, what you could say is, what does a typical day or week look like in the role? Asking for a raise when you're not even hired, right, could really set off, a bad impression that you're only committed to the money, not necessarily the goals and values and interests of the organization. Of course, money does matter, right? But conversations around a raise or salary will happen at a later stage, right? Instead, you can ask about typical days and weeks in a role, perhaps who you may be working with, right? Will you be working at home or in office, right? And what teams you'll be working with. That just shows more professionalism and commitment and engagement to the potential job. What does your company do? I mean, straightforward. You should know this beforehand, right? Before when you are applying. And we've talked about the research stage, how to gather research, what kind of things you should be consulting before you actually go into the interview. But instead, what you can ask is how your organization is different compared to your competitors, right? It just shows a more strategic thinking mindset, right? Engagement and commitment to the organization, and what kind of competition you may be up against as part of that company. Work hours, and will you have to work overtime or evenings versus how you would describe the company's values around work-life balance. Okay, a much more professional way to respond and engage around work-life balance, right? Your commitment to whether it be a 9 to 5, right, or more flexible hours around the 7 day week, right? So getting a better insight through a question like this that's posed like this versus something that's a little bit more direct, right? If you'll have to work evenings or overtimes, it comes off as lacking engagement. If the employer is to say, yes, you will have to work overtime or evening. When you ask like this, it just shows that, you may be heading down a path that's a little bit more negative. All right, just moving along. When you will be making your hiring decision versus instead, can you tell me about the next steps in your hiring process before your company is able to complete an employment offer? So this is a question I think is relevant to any job posting, any opportunity that you're applying for, regardless of sector. You always want to know what next steps are. Very good question to leave off with. Instead of asking as direct on the left-hand side here, you can ask for a little bit more details in terms of overall next steps. Okay. Will you pay for training and provide the time to do it versus how do you expect the role to change in the next 5 years? So the latter here will give, the latter will give more information about the role, the history of it, what's going to be happening to it in the future. Training and supports in terms of onboarding will be provided, and I'm sure they'll be mentioning more about that once they're actually ready to hire you. Are there opportunities for employment in other departments? And you instead, what you can say, are there other departments within the company that the team works closely with? Okay, so on the left-hand side here, it shows that you may already be thinking about working elsewhere, not necessarily committed to the job that you've applied for, that you've expressed interest in. Instead, if you ask about other departments, how you'll be interacting with them, that just shows a level of engagement that will show favorably, right, to an employer and an ability to have to work with other people and just strong interpersonal skills. Okay. And that brings us towards the end here. That is the closing of our presentation. And I just want to thank everybody for listening and for all the engagement here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. That was very informative, especially I think the illegal questions portion of your presentation sparked quite a lot of, engagement on our chat. So I was wondering if you could quickly take a few questions. Thank you so much, really. It was such a detailed presentation. And I think a lot of us who have been a part of the job interview process in Canada have gone through similar situations. And I think a lot of people, we won't have too much time to address all the questions, and we have quite a few in our chat. But for all our attendees out there, Ahmed, you can reach out to Ahmed and Jamoya on their ACCES employment IDs if you have additional questions or you need more details about the presentation that was just up. Very quickly, Ahmed, I want to ask you, one of our attendees has asked you to give us an example of an answer to an illegal question. Some of these, like the last one really cracked me up about, just sneaking in that question about the kids that, oh, I left my kids at school, but do you have kids? I know you said redirect or what, redirect, and, but sometimes it's not really easy, as you may know. The interviewer may be persistent, may be aggressive, and the interviewee doesn't want to obviously get on the wrong side of a potential, can you give us an example of an answer?
Yeah. Jamoya, can I defer this to you? Maybe if you want to, yeah,
Certainly.
thank you.
No worries, Ahmed, certainly. And oftentimes it's very difficult to redirect because as you said, you don't want to one, ruin your chances of getting that job, and two, potentially ruin your reputation as a potential interviewee at other organizations. But one of the things I always encourage my clients to think about when in interview is if at the interview stage an employer is already showcasing that they have certain biases towards your certain intersections that you may have, whether you may be a mother or you may be a parent or father or single father, single mother, whatever it is, if they're already displaying that at the interview stage, chances are it's a obvious insight into their culture.
Right.
So would you, it also then it begs the question, do you want to work with this employer? Because if you are a mother and you are a parent and you do have children and you potentially will have childcare related issues, you want to ask yourself, is this someone I want to work with long term? And whether or not this job may be sustainable for you if you fall into that category. So oftentimes you can confidently and also very politely say, I don't feel confident answering that question at this point in time. Or you can answer the question, but of course, you making that decision after the interview that this is not going to be a place that you would like to work. So you're not moving forward with the interview. So you can choose to kind of navigate depending on the situation that you're in. But oftentimes, I would say that's a key indicator that that employer probably will not have any sort of accommodations for you or not willing to give you that accommodation that may, of course, ruin your chances of retaining that job for a very long time.
Right. Though it is, I mean, difficult to navigate such a situation because in that moment you're feeling a lot of feelings. You probably want to
Exactly.
work in this company, and it's on your list of top to 10 companies to work, and it's really sometimes that you land up in such a situation. But great advice, Jamoya. Another question is how to respond to the question about a gap on your resume. This is something that we get a lot.
Really good question. So how do you respond to a question about a gap? So oftentimes you speak very candidly about why the gap is on your resume. One of the things I typically tell my clients as well is if during that gap you took time off to either raise a family, there's certain skills, like transferable skills that you gained through taking care of a household, raising a family, or even taking care of somebody who is potentially like elderly or somebody who was going through like a medical crisis. There's certain skills and transferable skills that you've developed during that time. So even though there's a gap in your resume, there's not a gap in your skill set. So you're still continuing to develop yourself. So you're still very marketable. And also just being very candid about that experience. What does it that the gap look like? And being upfront. And that's where your cover letter comes into play. So if you know you have a gap in your resume and the employer is asking for a resume that is mandatory, but a cover letter that is optional, that's an opportunity to tell a story. So the employer is looking at your resume and saying, "Ooh, there's a gap," but there's more information in my cover letter as to why there's a gap in my resume and what I did during that time. A lot of people take gaps to do short courses or certifications or micro credentials. So those things you want to highlight in the cover letter as well. So you utilize your cover letter to tell that story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. We'll take one final question. We have a
Of
lot of
course.
questions, but so I want to remind everyone who's attending that this presentation will be available on all our socials and on our website. You can reach out to both Jamoya and Ahmed on their ACCESS employment IDs, which are posted in the chat. But we'll proceed with one final question before we wrap up. We have a question about why do most employers not proceed to in-person interviews with a newcomer in Canada, even after having a positive, qualification outcome with confirmation during the pre-interview screening with the.
Mhm.
What could some of the reasons be?
I'd say the number one reason for that is that at the current moment, it's in what we call an employer market. When it comes to the labor market, which means an employer has the pick of the litter as it relates to candidates. So while your interview was very positive, there's probably 50 other candidates that also had a very positive interview. So in times before, maybe 10 years ago, you'd be in competition for a certain job or a posting with maybe say 9 other people or 5 other people. Now it's the double digits. So oftentimes I would say do not get discouraged from those experiences. Use it as a positive. What is it that I need to change moving forward? How can I practice to be a more stronger candidate in another interview? One of the things that Amit talked about in the presentation today was your elevator pitch. Your elevator pitch should be so strong and so powerful that you can tell the employer, potential employer, about yourself in 30 seconds, and it can be your biggest selling point. So work on that. And of course, while you sit and you wait for employment opportunity, don't just work and look for jobs. You also want to make sure that you're doing little courses like micro credentials, certifications, looking at volunteer opportunity, anything to show the employer that you're really dedicated to moving towards employment. So those things are really key. And also remembering that you're in competition with quite a bit of people, so you do have to put your best foot forward in every interview. And as Ahmed said, we do offer services such as mock interviews, Spark Hire, that can really help you to be a cut above the rest in those interviews as well.
Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have, but such great information, Jamoya, Emma. Thank you so much for that very informative and detailed presentation, of course, and for answering as many questions with so much nuance and so much detail. Thank you again. We will swiftly move on to our next presenter. Thank you, Jamoya and Emma. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, next up on the Canadian Immigrant Web Conference series for hiring trends and interview preparation with ACCESS Employment is Murli Murthy. Murli is a best-selling author, leadership trainer, and our resident career coach at Canadian Immigrant. Just like our previous presenters, we will open up the floor to a Q&A after Murli's presentation. But if you have questions for him while he is presenting, do feel free to post them in the chat or in the Q&A section in your Zoom window. But also feel free to send us questions at info@canadianimmigrant.ca. With that, Murli, over to you.
All right. Besagi, thank you so much. Blink and the year has gone.
Yes.
We are in the last month of the year. So, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to hang out with all of you, especially in the last month. In just 10 days from now, we'll be doing happy holidays, and I think celebrations have already begun. It's the holiday season, time to get all those gifts and add on some calories and all. Be careful about that. But more importantly, when it comes to your career and your job, how do you end the year nicely? And how do you go forward in Jan with full force? So the theme of my talk is finish 2024 strong and start 2025 stronger. All right. And like Baisakhi said, I am a resident career coach. Coincidentally, everything I'm going to talk in the next 30 minutes is also going to come It's also going to appear as a blog article on the Canadian Immigrant magazine of the December issue of the magazine. In a few days from now, anything I'm going to cover today, you can also read it as an article. And we are very excited about this. And I'll tell you why. Rewind 11 months back or fast forward 12 days later, however you want to do it, right? Fast forward 20 days later or rewind 11 months. When you rewind 11 months, on December 31, 2023, you know how it ended? At 11:59, you said what? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you said Happy New Year, all right? And you ushered in the new year. Today, take a call, take an inventory. Was the year really happy? Man, we wish Happy New Year, but in Canada, you're again clearing the snow on the first of the month. So, Happy New Year. Was the year really happy when it comes to your career? Was there something new? Like the speakers before me, Jamoy and Ahmed spoke about. Did you learn any new skill? Did you get a new job? In your job, did you get promoted? Did you get a pay raise? Did you buy a home? Did you buy a car? Whatever. If you promised yourself Happy New Year, it better be happy, it better be new, it better be a great year, isn't it? I don't think anyone wishes same old year. Baisakhi, same old year. No. We say Happy New Year. And so, as the year comes to a close, when it comes to your job and career prospect, do an inventory. Reflect on the goals that you set, big or small. Reflect on them. Do an inventory, and that's how you can do a measure of what you accomplished, what is lacking, and how you can set goals and a clear path to go into the next year. All right. So watch out for patterns. Right. If you're not getting a job after many interviews, what could be the pattern? And like Jem Moyer said before me, maybe you need to upskill. In fact, the holiday season may be holiday season for the corporations, not for you. Use it to upskill, learn new skills. All right. So I would like to share a presentation that I put together, and let's get started. I hope everyone can see this. Baisakhi, I hope everyone can see this presentation.
Yes, I can see it here.
Thank you, Baisakhi. So finish 2024 strong and start 2025 stronger. And I'm going to share 3 points. I just split my conversation into 3 parts. And let's take an inventory of the time as well. Okay. So I'll wrap up in the next 25 minutes. All right. 3 things you need to do as you start the year strong, end the year strong, and start the next year stronger. All right. So on 31st, when you say Happy New Year, it better be happy and it better be new. Step number 1, take inspired action toward your goals. A dream without a goal is just a fantasy. We all know what happens on the 1st of Jan. Everyone says, I'll lose my weight, and the parking lot in the gym is full. People have bought new sneakers and everything, right? There's hardly any space in the gym. But the 7th of the month, the parking lot is getting more spaced out, right? What happened? If you don't plan it properly, you will fall out. Don't just say something, make a plan, all right? Do a plan. For instance, even now as we speak, do you know if you're in the job market, right now people could be hiring. A lot of people are on holiday leave, they're taking vacations. Now is the time companies could be hiring because they wanted this is a very important month for retail sales. So there might be position. So the most important thing you want to do is take action. Action is necessary to turn your dreams into reality. You want to take small, consistency is key, consistent and persistent step towards your goals and create a momentum. Just like how brushing your teeth became a practice and a momentum, every morning you do it. Every morning, wake up and do the following things. For one, look at this quote from Melita Campbell, the author of this book, A Shy Girl's Guide to Networking. I mean, there are a lot of quotes on networking, but I picked up this one. I've learned that a strong network is the ultimate shortcut to everything you want to achieve. Start networking, guys, online and offline. Go out and meet people. The pandemic is over. You can go to many events right now. Go to event.ca, Eventbrite, happen.ca. Look up events that are happening, industry-specific event, and go out and meet people. If not, go on social media, join groups. There is the Professional Immigrant Network. There's TRIAC. There are millions of groups that you can join and start networking, build connections. Okay, guys? So networking is important. Networking can lead to this. There is another quote. Your net worth depends on your network. Success depends on your network. Your position in an industry depends on your network. Your network is all about what people are saying about you, how happy they're recommending you. That's the reason you network. You network with someone so they can recommend you to someone, isn't it? So go out, step out of your room. Whatever happened, do not be logged into within the four walls. Step out, meet people, network on social media. And I have a favorite quote. I say, you know what, while the rest of the world is networking, I want you to net give. In other words, hey, what can I give to this association? How can I provide value? And I'll come to that a little later. While you network, also make sure you're net giving. Network is like just taking and taking, but life is about give and take, deposits and withdrawals. In a networking scenario, you must also net give. I'll come to that. So that's networking. Networking can also lead to volunteering. Like I mentioned, there could be organizations right now looking for temporary hires. Whether it's a permanent or temporary, just get into the boat. You'll find a seat later. All right. Anyone from India? I'm from India. You all know what the scenario is when you get into a public transit. You just get into the bus or the train. You'll find a seat later. So get in. Maybe volunteering positions are there. Be brazen about asking for volunteering positions. Okay. So this is one part of the action. A second part of the action is if you are looking for recruiters and hiring managers, have you wondered where they are looking for you? You know some of the stats. Whatever job you're applying today, could be marketing, could be sales, could be finance, admin. Over 100 people easily apply per job in Canada. Where does that leave you? One job, hundreds of applications. And because of that, recruiters scan resume. This is an industry average. A recruiter takes less than 6 to 7 seconds to scan a resume. Okay, how much can you contain in 6 seconds? So which means you are much greater and stronger than a piece of paper, isn't it? You do not have to only depend on the paper resume to open your door. So if you are looking for a recruiter or a hiring manager, where are they looking? Where do you think they are looking? Where do you think hiring managers and recruiters look? By the way, a disclaimer. Any image I'm sharing on this platform, I'm not a designer, absolutely. I'm not a graphic designer. I don't know ABC of nothing. Every image I picked off the internet. When you do a Google search, you will find these images. You can do a Google Bing search, whatever. On every search engine on the internet, these images are available. And I found this image on the internet as the previous images. So where do hiring managers and recruiters look? This exactly is where they're looking for. In fact, they say every minute, 3 to 4 people get hired on LinkedIn. In the last 1 minute, 3 to 4 people from your industry got the job that could have gone to you. Because when they're looking for you on LinkedIn or Facebook or X or Instagram or Facebook, Pinterest or whatever, are you there when they're looking for you? This is an image that I picked up on the internet. Over 70 to 80%, LinkedIn is the primary source, followed by Facebook. Don't think Facebook is only for sharing cat and dog videos. You need to know how because the company you are looking to work for is on Facebook. Why aren't you? Think about it. Every organization that you want to work for, the banks and the IT companies, they're all on Facebook and Instagram. Why shouldn't you be? They are on X. What are you doing on X? You can write a blog, you can do a podcast, you can do videos, right? This is where you need to understand the power of social media. Here is another image. Thousands and thousands of people found jobs through social media. Guys, are you kidding me? This is real. The CEO of Oracle got hired. You all know Gangnam Style was found on YouTube. Justin Bieber was found on social media. Why not you? Right? Elections have been won. The Arab uprising happened because of social media. See where it led to today. All because of a tweet. Right? Down south, the president-elect, he started his own social media platform, but he got elected because of social media. So take it seriously, guys. Build your brand on social media. That's the action you need to take to end the year strong and start 2025 stronger. All right? Look at this. Like I mentioned, every image I share with you, I found it on the internet. Look, Financial Online, and they share this. 3 people are hired on LinkedIn every minute. Right? In the very first minute, you will see over 50 people have already applied for it. All right? So take inspired, smart action. LinkedIn, networking, social media, everything is important. All right. What is something else you can do during the holidays? You should actually do it all your life. I want to show you an example. Look at behind me. What do you see? You see a bookshelf? I read a lot of books. And then you see my mementos. I also travel a lot around the world. But those are my artifacts from around the world. But above me are books. My home is full of books. I have a bookshelf. Why? Because James Hume says the art of communication is the language of leadership. If there's one skill, if there's one thing you want to take from this webinar today, guys, there's only one thing is this. According to Harvard Business Review, Harvard says this, guys, the number one criteria for advancement and promotion for professional is an ability to communicate effectively. Increase your vocabulary, learn new words. We have all become victims of social media and our phone. In fact, if Baisakhi sends me a joke, I won't even say that was good. I might put a LOL. Don't we all do that? If you're lazy, we don't even write LOL. We put an emoji of a smiling face. All this is resulting in all human beings today lacking communication skills. 10 years back on the TTC, I used to see people holding books and newspapers. Today, I see them all holding a smartphone. See, that's the price we have paid for technology, but you can be different. Please, there is a website called thriftbooks.com if you want to buy cheap books. There's, of course, Indigo and chapters and everything, but Amazon. But if you want to buy a great book and $3 to $4, right? Thriftbooks.com. You can just log in and you can buy a book, but please start reading books. Another quote I picked off the internet. Someone who communicates well will always achieve more than someone who's technically savvy. In interviews, when it comes to, like the speaker before me, Jamo, said it's an employer market. Along with you, many others have been interviewed. Maybe everyone gave the same answer, but the one who communicated his or her answer with clarity, with confidence, is the one who gets selected. Ultimately, when it comes to the top 2 or 3 candidates, same skill set, same experience, same background, the one who communicated well wins. Start brushing up your communication skills always. All right, guys? One more quote. Learn to communicate like your career dependent on it. It's the one skill that remains valuable regardless of the industry or the job you pursue. And communication is a superpower. These are books that I recommend, guys. These are just a sampling of books that all successful professionals should read, bringing out the best in people, empowering others. How I raise myself from success in selling. Okay, many sales jobs. How to win friends and influence people. The magic of thinking big. Skill with people. And for professionals, for senior managers and all, the 7 habits of highly effective people. There are hundreds of books. This is just a random sample of books that I put together. And like I showed you above me, I buy a book a month. Every month, I make sure I buy one book. As I'm talking to you, this is the book I'm reading right now. I just picked it off the shelf here. Got it, guys? So, what is it? As we think, so we become. Which is so true. As a man thinketh, so is he. So, read books, volunteer, social media, LinkedIn, and go out and network. Make the year strong. Make every minute count in the next 20 days. Point number 2. As the network, remember I spoke about NetGive. Look to add value everywhere. Be a problem solver. Always frame problems as opportunities. Let me repeat. Frame problem as opportunity. The pandemic happened. People are all shut in their home. The creator of Zoom saw the problem as an opportunity. Today is a multi-millionaire. And we are all talking on Zoom, isn't it? While all of us were cribbing out the pandemic, he saw an opportunity. When you're approaching a position, an IT position at Rogers, a finance position at RBC, something. Hey, organization, you might have a problem. I can solve it. Use your skill set. All right, guys? An image I picked off the internet. People don't care who you are. No one cares who you are, guys. You may be a student, you may be a new immigrant, you got 2 kids at home, no one cares, let's be frank. They only care if you can solve the problem quickly. In fact, I went on the internet, guys, and when I found that recruiters only, so if you search average time a recruiter spends per resume, you will find 6 to 7 seconds. That prompted me, it's like peeling an onion. You find one more layer, right? That prompted me to ask one more question to the internet. Hey, wait a minute. If recruiters are only spending 6 to 7 seconds, what the heck do they look for? How can you find out who you are and whether you're a good fit for my company in 6 seconds? Apparently, they do have a technique and there is an answer on the internet. Here is another image I found on the internet. Attributes employers seek on a candidate's resume. In the first 6 seconds, they need to see traces of leadership, not the word leadership, traces of leadership. Okay, in fact, we've written many articles. You can look up our, column on Canadian Immigrant where you've spoken about how do you convey leadership on your resume. Communication skills and teamwork and work ethic and everything. But look at point number 2. That intrigued me. Problem solving skills. Please do not enter the job market and say, I want a job. Don't be looking for a job. On your resume, on your LinkedIn, on your cover letter, on your email signature, even if you are texting someone, convey to the hiring manager, to the organization, to the recruiter, if I'm hired, this is how I can solve this problem. That's why you write a blog. That's why you do a podcast. Make yourself valuable. Show that you can add value to an organization, to a job. Don't just come here, okay, Canada, I've immigrated, here is my degree, here is my years of experience, where is my job? Doesn't work that way. As you sow, so shall you reap. You got to put the seed first. The first seed you put is of value. Hey, I am valuable, this is how I can add value. And then they will call you, okay? I just put this image together. The one on the left is you. Hey, I want a job, Canada. But that's what Canada is telling you. Show me how you can add value. Can you solve a current problem? And in the confluence of that is your job. I hope this makes sense. I want a job. Show you can add value. And here is the job. Okay, guys? There's a website on career, with a career portal called the muse.com. You can go check it out. I just grabbed a screenshot of their page. The muse.com says, what will set you apart and allow you to get any job you want is your ability to prove that you create value. Find a problem that exists. With AI creeping into every industry, every organization, find a problem, how that's going to threaten jobs, and see, I have a solution for that. Look at your skill set, because that's what you do if you're hired, right? If you're a data analyst, if you're a financial coordinator, whatever, if you're added to an organization, you'll solve the problem. But do the job before you get the job. Add that to your portfolio, on your LinkedIn, on your social media, right? And you're telling the world, look at the people I help. Look at the problems I'm already solving. Look at the value I create, boom, and you're hired. So be a problem solver. Point number 1, take action every day. Point number 2, be a problem solver. This is what happens, guys. As you're doing this, you will be called to an interview. All right, guys? And they will ask you these questions. Tell me about yourself. They'll ask you behavioral questions. How do you deal with difficult people? Tell me about a mistake you make. What do you say? Tell me about yourself. You summarize your professional background, you highlight personal qualities or achievement, relevant current achievement. Behavioral questions. How do you deal with difficult people? Remember, interview preparation is also part of the talk today. These questions allow you to answer them properly. Your confidence comes from competence. Your competence comes from daily habit. You can't sit doing nothing for the next 20 days. Let me get over the holidays. I'm too tired. I'll start on Jan 1. No. That is the reason people fail when they join the gym on Jan 1. But the one who joined the gym on December 20 and continues the momentum does not quit on the first of the month. Make sense, guys? So start working now. Okay. All these, tell me about a mistake you made. Next question. Why do you want to work for us? Why should we hire you? Why do you want to work? Why do you want this job? Answers to each. In fact, I have a PDF copy of this whole sheet. I just broke it into 3 parts. Okay, I'll give my contact details in the end. I can email it to you later, or I can WhatsApp it to you, right? Okay, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do you answer these questions? You know what? This can be a cheat sheet that you can carry with you on your phone. But all this will only work if you're currently polishing. Keep your razor sharp. In fact, one of the books I shared, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, Franklin Covey, this is what he says: sharpen the saw. Keep sharpening. Don't get blunt. Right, guys? You're a sharp individual. Stay sharp. Every day, sharpen your skills. Every day, spend time on becoming valuable. All right, guys? And we know this. When you're ready, you can answer all interview questions in the STAR format: situation, task, action, and result. Right? Set up the scene. Okay, like the question, the skills gap and the employment gap, and how do you answer? Just like the speaker Jaymoyab said before me, I may not have had a job, but I've been brushing up my transferable skills. Over 50% of recruitment is driven by transferable skills, and I was building on it. Keep polishing yourself, guys. You're bound to succeed. There's no way the universe will deny you if you've been working hard. Got it, guys? Don't think like a hunter. A hunter just goes in and starts shooting. But he has to do it every day. A farmer clears the ground, drops the seed, fertilizes, and then nurtures, and then he gets a bountiful crop. As you sow, so shall you reap. Think like a farmer. You do the work once and you reap a bounty. Keep practicing, keep polishing your skills. Take action, keep networking, and go meet people, polish up your social media every day. And point number 3, I know we have the last 3 minutes left. I said with take action every day. Point number 2, turn yourself into a problem solver. People look at you, they must not look at you as a job seeker. They must look at you and they must say, this individual can solve a problem for my organization. But above all, and this is my message to each one of you, believe in your unlimited potential, guys. You are limitless, each one of you on the call. Remember, the universe made no mistake. When you were a baby, Elon Musk was also a baby. Have you seen babies in the hospital? They all are so cute. They're all similar. Who knew one guy would be here looking for a job, one day would become Elon Musk? Same 2 hands, 2 legs, same 24 hours. The universe gave everyone the same deal. And they gave everyone the same human brain. The brain you have, the space between the ears, is the same human brain Elon Musk has. How come he is able to achieve so much in the same 24 hours? Runs 4 to 5 companies and hires thousands of employees. The same human brain found a cure for COVID, for cancer. The same human brain has sent man to Mars. You can do unimaginable things. You have immense potential. You haven't tapped into the right resources. When you network, you'll find the right people who will stretch you. When you go on social media, you'll find the right community that will uplift you. But you got to take the action. So believe in your potential. Believe in your abilities and your own potential. Never let self-doubt hold you captive. You got to be very careful, which is why the book I'm reading. As you think, you become that. Very true. Be careful with your thoughts. An average man gets 60,000 thoughts a day. Instead of using the energy to say, why am I not getting a job? Use the same energy to say, I am unstoppable. I'm working on myself and I am getting a job in January 2025. Change that same energy, change the word, and you change the feeling within. All right, guys, I believe in you. I believe in each one of you. Here's an image I found on the internet. God gave you a fingerprint that no one else has. So you can leave an imprint no one else can. You are unique, guys. Look at your thumbprint. Why do you want to become photocopy? I don't know. I'm a customer service. I don't know. I'm a project coordinator. No, you're unique. You're a brand. You got to project that on your social media. And you want to give proof by becoming a problem solver through an article, a blog, a podcast, something. Okay, guys? Always be thankful. It's the end of the year. So let's be grateful. This morning, many people did not wake up. You know that, right? You and I woke up. So let's be grateful for all the things that have been given to us. And gratitude is absolutely important at the end of the year. So many things to be grateful for in the last 1 year. So many things to be grateful in the coming year. Okay, guys? You can be anything you want to be. Overcome obstacles. Embrace your path. work hard, every day take action. Every Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was built every day. Every day do a little and create a life full of purpose and joy, guys. I want to sum up. Take action every day. Go on social media. Go networking. Volunteer. Practice your interview skills. Be a problem solver. And if you want, I'm going to give you my contact detail. I can send you this presentation or the information, the uh, interview hot tips. I can send it to you. I can also send you any of the books you want as PDF, any resource you want to make yourself unstoppable is with you, right? It's in your control. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. What a beautiful quote by Zig Ziglar. Start today and you'll be great later. All right, guys? Be unstoppable. We are exactly at 2:30. I'm done. Over to the amazing Baisakhi Roy.
Murli, thank you so much. And what a way to end, one of our many web conferences this year. We've had such a great lineup of speakers. You have one more coming up next week, updates of details of which we will post online. But thank you, Murli, again for inspiring us, for really lighting the fire and, getting us to go in the new year. Thank you so much again for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. All right, Baisakhi, Happy New Year, and we'll catch up in the next year. All right?
Thank you.
Everyone, start 2025 stronger. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And
Bye.
thank you so much to everyone today for attending our web conference series. Thank you to our partner, ACCES Employment, to our speakers, Jamoya, Ahmed, and Murli, for joining us today, sharing their skills, expertise, words of wisdom, so much encouragement, so much positive reinforcement. Thank you so much. I think we all need that at the end of the old year. And, looking forward to the new year with much positivity. If you missed anything in this presentation, this web conference will be posted on our website for you to rewatch. It will be up on our YouTube channels and other social media platforms. And if you have any questions for any of our speakers, you have all their contact details. If not, please send us an email to info@canadianimmigrant.ca. So until next time for the next web conference, thank you.